Hey everyone, I was going to do a bit of what spares we take on trips sort of video. I've been meaning to do it for a while, and we're going to take this on the Canning stock route. Is it going to make it? Bada bing, bada boom. Is there going to be any problems? So I'm going to run through a bit of a chit chat, spares, what I would take, what I wouldn't take, and a fair bit of discussion around planning for a trip like that. Because there is a lot of planning, and it's more of a, I don't know if it's really planning so much as thinking through on knowing your vehicle and getting to know it and what could go wrong and what needs to be done as prevention. And so you set up the vehicle right, and that includes all the aftermarket, the packing. We're talking the vehicle, we're not talking about water and food and survival for you. We're talking just the vehicle surviving, because it's part of your survival, if you know what I mean. So I think first what we'll do is we'll just have a look under the bonnet and have a quick bit of a chit chat about what spares I normally carry. Chit chat, sort of what spares I normally carry. So what would I normally carry? Let's just rewind back to 2014 when I got this vehicle. Let's say I probably didn't know them that well, because when, 11 years of water under the bridge, so I know a lot more here in the Prado Hospital, seeing all of these vehicles, Prados, Hiluxes, having these Facebook groups, reading all the comments and all the posts and the problems people have and don't have and all that. I reckon I put it all together and worked out and got it all sussed out 99.9%. So back in 2014 when I got this, didn't really know the vehicles that well. I trusted Prados 120s pretty well. Obviously 150s were out. I definitely preferred the 120 then. This video is not about what I prefer now. And there was all sorts of concerns about injectors and cracked pistons, and to be quite honest, nothing's really changed. It hasn't become a bigger problem, and I think I understand the problem a lot better than I did back in 2014. To me, it all just makes perfect, clear sense, but it's hard to share the knowledge with people to get everybody else to understand the same. I'm sure some people get what I mean. So look, spares back then, alternator was always a spare, that thing down there, carried a spare, particularly on the bigger trips. So we had a small group of the usuals. There was 4 or 5 of us, and we literally chucked in $50 each, and I got an alternator off eBay, 5-year warranty or whatever, reputable supply. Actually, I went and picked it up. It's an eBay seller, Trump Auto in Epping, and I went there and I picked it up, gave him his $250 cash, whatever it was at the time, and then we had a bit of a tech day and we practiced installing it and all that sort of thing. It's never been used, it's still in the box, so that just goes to show even how reliable the alternators are. And there's been a lot of other 1KDs on trips with me since then, never used it. There's been 2 alternators failed that I can think of. That was Kev's Hilux in Robe. He's got a house over there, we were staying there, so he was lucky it sort of happened at his place and he had a spare car there. Not ideal, but that's sort of the issue. None of us had a spare alternator because there's someone else. Cole usually carries a spare alternator too. He didn't have it that time either. We both sort of looked at each other and go, what are we doing? Anyway, and what else? The other one was Cole's alternator failed one time in the high country, and I don't think he had his spare with him, but somebody brought it that was coming on the trip, so it all worked out all right. So funnily enough, you didn't learn a lesson the first time, so then it gets to happen to you as well. But I can't think of anyone else on a trip that their alternators failed, other than, of course, other makes and models and brands and that, which is the first part of the story why I trust these 120s and these 1KD diesels and the 5-speed auto and all the diffs and the driveline and everything on these vehicles so much. I really do trust them. So let's just have a look around, As far as brakes go, as long as you've got plenty of meat on your brakes, you shouldn't need to carry spare brakes or worry about your brakes. We don't see problems with master cylinders, ABS units, boosters, anything like that. Air filters, I don't want to go on about it too much, but they block up if you sit in the dust, stay out of the dust. K&N filter's never going to block up. With enough oil on it, and even with dust, it's still going to filter the air. That's the best results, clear by far what I've found, and I'm that confident. On the CSR trip, I just don't want to take a spare air filter, okay? There'll be plenty of oil on it. I haven't cleaned it for years. It's not blocked, it's not going to get blocked. I'd rather take the MAF sensor cleaner to clean this sensor, because of the amount of oil I put on it, it does get some oil on it. It doesn't cause problems, but it's good to have it clean. So there's one of my first spares to take. It's the MAF cleaner, okay? Coolant, again, the 1KDs, the cooling system just doesn't leak coolant. There's no hoses that fail. The water pump on every make and model leaks eventually, so that's why we do it as prevention, so it's not going to leak on the trip, because We just do it every 150K. That's the BFE kit if you don't know about it. We've got a whole playlist on the BFE job. Check it out, get to understand why we do these things. Because it failed for one person, and I don't know if I'm going to end up out in the middle of the CSR and some weather front's going to come over and we're going to get 100 mil of rain and we have to park up on a hill for 5 days and wait for it to dry before we can move. I don't know what's going to happen when you're out there 2 or 3 weeks. You're sort of trapped out there. You're not going to just get airlifted out of there. You've got to work it out. But if we do end up driving in wet stuff and we get salty, wet stuff in the drive belt, then it could wash the grease out of the bearing just like it did to someone else that changed it only 20, 30,000 Ks later. One of these, and it's a double bearing, collapsed, which shredded his belt. So that puts belts back on the menu, okay? So belts are on the menu. Any make or model this could happen to. Obviously, if you've got the petrol engine, the V6, people have done that trip in a 120 V6 that I know, so it certainly works. I've got to talk to him actually, get some info if I can. But the V6 revs quite a bit more than the diesel, and it's got the pulleys and the bearings, and some of them are down low, and I'd be carrying spare bearings, but it's only after one experience, not a big deal. But what I say is the drive belt is very light, they don't break and all that sort of thing. That's why forever we haven't carried spare drive belt. But what happened was, so you change your bearings still as part of the BFE job, and you keep your old bearings. They're very small, and you put them somewhere in the vehicle and carry them as spares. Absolutely. This is something that you do now. If you're traveling remote areas, small things to carry nice and light. Check it every morning and night, the vehicle, because you want to find it before it happens. Look, listen, learn. Try and avoid that mud equals money and disaster. I don't think we're ever going to need it ever again, to be quite honest, but we'll carry the spares. And also a spare drive belt. Your old one will do the job as long as it's genuine. So if it does happen to you like it happened to Frank, and that bearing collapses and it shreds your belt, you've got your old bearings in your belt. So at least if you've got the tools, you can change it yourself and get yourself back on the road. And you want to make sure you've got some basic tools. That's a pretty basic job to get to replacing that. You're going to need some 14mm tools. That's the bolt on the front there, that one there. You're going to need some 10mm tools to pull a few things out of the way, and a 12mm, whatever, sorry, for the fan bolts there. Depends which one, but it's probably not going to happen, right? But what am I going to be carrying for this trip? So far, we've got a can of MAF cleaner. We've got 5 bearings and a drive belt. Spare coolant, nah. If something happens, I can put water. It's just carrying extra weight. And this is an important part of the factor, keeping this is the thing, right? How much is too much and how much is not enough? Because you want to carry more stuff because your survival is dependent on having enough food and water and spare parts and tools. But carrying more means you load up the vehicle more, and it's more going to push the vehicle to the failure point because you're carrying so much weight, possibly over. Once again, I do a lot of preventative maintenance. That means lubrication and stuff, but it's also replacing parts that fatigue and deteriorate over time, which is what I've done on this vehicle. And I'll be analysing this a lot. Now, I've changed the radiators years ago at 300,000 Ks on. I analysed the old ones and I went, that was a waste of time. So there's no need to change radiator hoses on the Toyotas, on these. They're just such awesome quality. The hoses don't let you down. I have not done the heater hoses, and I look at it and I go, gee, am I crazy? So I sort of think I should change all the hoses, but again, they're good hoses. I've never seen one fail. On the 150 Pradas, you've got those plastic T-pieces around here. You want to give them a good check out. I'd recommend you carry 1 or 2 as a spare if you don't change it. So if you check yours and it doesn't break, that's good. We'll just buy it for 10 or 20 bucks, whatever it is. Keep one in your spare. So there's something else for your spares list. One of those T-pieces. Maybe make sure you got these clamps and the original equipment on there. This could be quite a long video, people. I've got plenty to say about reliability. Now, don't talk about my wiring here because it's not really my wiring. When I purchased this vehicle in 2014, it had the Red Arc SPI 12 there. It's a crappy little battery and a couple of these wires, power running to the back, which is this dodgy one here. Look, I've never really upgraded it, and I might get around to it, but the problem I've got is if I put a K on fuse bracket, it lifts the height of the battery up too much. I'm not sure if we've got clearance to close the bonnet. It's bad enough with this strut there hitting. So look, I don't like this battery tray setup. If it was up to me, if it wasn't already there, it'd be over there in the corner where the compressor is, where it should be, and that compressor would be up here. It'd be the other way around. So I'm not recommending this setup. And I've never really, all we got here really is we've got, I think this is an Anderson plug that was already there that goes to the back. That's your battery monitor. That's the power to the back. That's obviously going to the SBI. This one's going to Earth. I think I've added on, again, an old recycled UHF from another car with some dodgy old, I think there's a UHF radio connection there. And the other wire, I think, is just some USBs to the front of the car. So that's all I've added. So I've got USBs in the front, the power to the back for the fridge and whatever else you want to plug in on that one, and the battery monitors are good. You get them off AZ Scanner's website. This is the iDrive one, same stuff, different bucket, but AZ Scanners will probably give us a discount code soon, so sit tight. They're pretty cheap, they are handy to have, and I've got a bunch of them. I'm going to install them on a lot of my batteries, so that's a separate video, stay tuned. On this one, I have changed the radiator as prevention, just because, again, remember that workshop experience, I do see over time, they do deteriorate. There's nothing wrong with the old ones, probably a good spare. Nothing was about to break off. I even did a fair test on this. I even shown that in videos plenty of times. No issues. You could break this one just as easy by leaning on it, so don't do that. That's the last thing you want to have out in the middle of the CSR. So just be careful when you open your bonnet. People that come, everybody wants to come over. When I say this, I'm just talking general. I've seen this before out on trips. You know, you pop the bonnet and everybody comes over and everybody wants to grab something and have a wiggle and, you know. Mate, in the middle of the Simpson Desert or out on the middle of the CSR is not the place to start wiggling around battery terminals, okay? So tell everybody, please look, but don't touch as soon as they come over, because they love grabbing, testing, wiggling everything and, you know, oh, can I break this off out here for you? Yeah, thanks, mate. That'd be awesome. So just tell them, look, but don't touch. You're welcome to bring a light, have a look around, let me know what you see, and I'll do my own testing. Please don't touch anything under the bonnet, or for that matter in the car or anywhere else. Okay, so preventative maintenance, radiator's been done. Now, a few years ago, I don't know when it was, you can check the videos, it's probably in a playlist. Check the changing the alternator video. The alternator, I was on a big outback trip. I came down to Deniliquin on the way back, and the rest of the family, it was me and Mitch on the trip, so then Mrs. and daughter, they came in this vehicle up to Deniliquin, no problem. And I think did we drive around there a little bit? At some point, yeah, the battery light came on once the car was there. I think it was after we met. We met at the shops, the bakery, the cafe, whatever, had some lunch, and then we drove back to the caravan park, and the battery light was on this vehicle. I started checking everything, checked the fuses, checked this, checked that. The alternator wasn't charging. There was nothing I could do to make it work. Throw some water on it, even though it hadn't been dirty, some compressed air, check the fuses, check whatever you want to check. It wasn't working. So what I did, I had to charge it. So I put the batteries on charge, and I was planning to drive it back to Melbourne with all the accessories off, basically running on the battery, see how far it got. And I had my right-hand man on standby with the tools and the spare alternator that was here in the workshop once again, to come and get me if I made it halfway or whatever, right? Come and swap the alternator. I was going to call RAC, see how that worked, but depending how busy they were, whether I got picked up or whether we changed, whatever. I had plan B, C, D, right? Anyway, long story short, I left, battery light was on, it flickered a bit, and then it went off about 20, 30 Ks down the road. Never saw it again since, as far as I can remember. Anyway, I went, well, I can't trust the alternator anymore, so I got a brand new, genuine one, put it on there. And the other one was on the shelf, and then someone needed a cheap alternator. And as far as I know, it was on his car for a year or two, no problem. So bada bing, bada boom, weird things happen. Maybe a bit of dirt or a bit of rock, something got up underneath a contact somewhere and it fell out again. So yeah, don't jump to conclusions on changing your alternator, and how bloody good are they. So I do trust it. So there's a couple of options to keep, now that it was new, I haven't really carried spare alternator anywhere because I trust the alternators. I'll say, I don't believe you're going to have a failure for at least 100,000 Ks with genuine parts, remember, with genuine. Probably even more like over 200,000. But once you get up there, you've probably got a 1 in less than 1,000, but you've got a chance of a failure of an alternator. So plan B is to carry a cheap spare, and then if it fails on a trip, you swap it over. And then when you get back, you fix up your genuine or buy a new genuine one, put it back on there that you can trust, and carry your spare again. So for the CSR, in the group, I think we'll be carrying a spare alternator or two perhaps, you never know, because if we have to go through that wet, muddy situation and some alternators fail, we might wish we had two. So I've got a feeling we might need to carry two for the 1KDs. And the other option is solar. So I'll have solar up on the roof there, so that worst case scenario, the alternator lets me down. It's not ideal for your fridge situation, but where we're going, the sun's probably going to be always shining, and there'll be other people with portable solar panels, so you could run the vehicle off what's on the roof and maybe a portable set, strap those somewhere as well, whatever you can do. Some adapters, Anderson plugs, and double adapters and extension leads and things like that. Zip ties as usual, and run the car off your batteries. You'll make it out of there. It might cause a bit of delays, but you know what? So spare alternator or solar panels is probably recommended for anyone. And I don't know that I'm going to be carrying a lot in other spares. A few basic tools, which would include a few Allen keys, because there's always something that needs an Allen key. 10 mil, 12 mil, 14 mil. So your 10 to 17 to 19 millimeter range. Not much in the 17, 19 around under the bonnet, but once you get under the car, you want to always be checking your bash plates or your underbody protection type plates, including around your bull bar and all those smaller plates with the little 10 mils. You can put Loctite, put 243 on them if you like before your trip. Make sure they don't come loose. Spare fluids is probably not a bad idea, like, some power steering oil. I don't think that we're going to need any spare fluids. No engines are going to burn oil or anything like that. But it's probably not bad to have some engine oil. I'll give you an example, right? So let's just say somebody did crack a piston. Well, you can still drive the car. It's going to, you may or may not drive it. You might have the engine running. You might, trust me, they go for hundreds and hundreds of Ks. You're going to drive the car out of there, but on 3 cylinders, you might need some help up some of the sand dunes, right? So you might be getting towed and driving. It'll be a combo. So it'll make it easier on the strap and the tow vehicle so you don't burn too much fuel. And you got to go light on the gas because you're pushing oil out through the crack in the piston and out the exhaust pipe, right? So the spare engine oil is to top up the engine that's got a cracked piston. So I hope you like my thinking. So some spare oil, but that being said, if you drive it nicely, you won't use any oil that's measurable amount. And I know, because I've been there, done that. We've driven 260 Ks on a cracked piston. And if you missed that story, it's all in the videos. That's why you shouldn't miss a video. 260 Ks on a cracked piston. Picked up oil at the servo that was about, I don't know, another, what was that, 20 Ks back, 50 Ks back, I can't remember. Picked up some oil there, made it to our destination to get picked up by ROCV and brought back, and the service worked perfectly. And gave the oil back to one of our travellers that I said, no, you just continue on the trip now. This is where you're going and what you're doing. And that's what they did. So drop the oil off on the way back and get a refund. That's what they did. Anyway, because it was bloody expensive oil, I tell you, out there. And we didn't need it. So we didn't need to carry it. Anyway, spares. Look, your biggest thing is what we've already talked about, preventative maintenance. Knowing all the things that are going to possibly let you down, knowing the vehicle really well. So let's make this a bit more of a checklist. Common failures are tyres. So you want a good, reliable brand of tyres that is tested and proven in the Australian outback. That, everybody's used, including what I've seen using ourselves on our own trips, right? All the majority of vehicles and just don't have any problems. And to be quite honest, the KO2s, KOs and KO2s, maybe KO3s, I just think they're going to be a really reliable tyre. So I'm most likely going to have a set of KO2s that are in like new condition that I purchased around 2022, I think, for the Hilux, that haven't been on there since then. They've been sitting in the shade in the room. That's what will be on the vehicle, I'm pretty confident. So tyres will be good. It's about tyre pressures. We've got tyre glue, some products to glue and repair tyre rubber. It's only 30 PSI, 20 PSI. So a lot of tyre plugs, because it's all going to be about tyres, tyre plugs, tyre repairs, obviously compressors, checking your wheel nuts, especially if you've got powder coated wheels, but 110, 115 Newton meters, maybe 120, somewhere in that range anyway, 110 to 120. Front wheel bearings, they can fail any time, more commonly from about 200,000 Ks, which is why we recommend if you're traveling, you've had those done every 200,000 Ks, or take some spares and be prepared to, change it on the trip and just inconvenience everybody on the group, because they got to hang around for a few hours while you're down there in the dirt and mud and sand or heat or whatever you might be in, or the rain, and changing your wheel bearings. So it sounds easier to just do it every 200,000 Ks in the workshop, doesn't it? So go ahead and do that. We've got the wheel bearing assemblies ready to go for the front of the Prados, suits FJs. We've got Hiluxes, 150 Prados. Don't worry about 250s. They're not Pradas. They're Jeep bloody Range Rover things. Nobody's going to be... They're just... Whatever. Let's not go there. Rear wheel bearings on this has been done recently, so they're not going to be a problem. They're about a 350k thing, okay? So if you're not near 350, just listen, make sure you got no noise and humming. Check, make sure there's no play in there. Do the visual check by pulling your ABS sensors out. Look in the hole with a torch and see if it looks reasonable in there, depending on what you know, if you've been watching the videos, you'll know what I mean. For me, I took off the heavy-duty fuel tank protection, the heavy-duty side steps to save a heap of weight, as this is a touring vehicle now, and it's going to be retiring at 500,000 Ks. I also took off the heavy-duty bash plates. They're over there. I'm not sure if I'm going to sell them or put them on the V6. What do you reckon, V6? What do you reckon? Do you want those bash plates? Yeah, he's not really talking about that way because he wants to go in the CSR, but I said, mate, you're not ready. Maybe next time. Anyway, spare fuel filters. Yeah, probably a good idea. Everyone should carry both, whatever spare fuel filters their vehicle runs, carry a spare fuel filter of each one and the tools to change it and know how to change it without breaking anything and keeping it clean and reliable, understanding if you've got dirt and dust around here, you could easily cause more problems by trying to change your fuel filter. So one of my pet hates is seeing people on trips and they're checking their air filter and everything's filthy, including them and their hands, and there's dust everywhere, and they open up air boxes and there's all dust floating around everywhere going on the clean side. I just can't stand that. And the same with when I watch people with fuel filters and that. It needs to be clean. Fuel filters, they're filters for a reason. That's because things need to be clean. Okay, so I don't know, do you get the picture? So basic tools, you know, have a screwdriver set, socket set, a spanner set. You don't want to be too heavy, but you want to have, well, you think about the things that might let you down. There's probably some things. Let's have a think about underneath the vehicle. What's underneath the vehicle? Since we covered here, your engine's going to be fine if you've done the maintenance. Worst case scenario, let's just say whether it's a DPF problem where you can't run the engine, or a cracked piston, pretend you couldn't run the engine, or a V6 that the radiator hose snapped off here and cooked the engine and the engine's finished. Whatever engine it is, a 1KZ that's bloody cracked ahead and it's cooked, right? So all 4 engines can fail. There's a chance that all, yep, 100%. I know which is the most popular engine and the numbers percentage-wise. But anyway, I know what I trust for fuel economy and carrying extra fuel, diesel rather than petrol and all that, but each to their own, right? Each to their own. I know which one's got more torque, better for maintaining. So anyway, this is not that video. So I know what I choose, but you know, that's why you have a few vehicles. We're going to have, I wasn't planning to have 6 on the trip. I thought it'd be less than that, but I sort of invited, just to get started, I invited the first 6 people and everybody said yes. Well, 5 people, including myself. Everybody's in on the trip. So that meant the next round of invitations didn't happen because we already have too many on the trip. 4 vehicles would have been ideal. So if anyone wants to cancel, that's fine. No, just joking. It's all good. Long as it's about quality, not quantity. And that's what we got. I think we've got a good group and a good group of vehicles. They're not all 1KDs, unfortunately. There's a couple of 1GDs, but they'll be okay. I think it's, what is it? Is it 4 1KDs, if I remember correctly, and 2 1GDs. So that'll be right. They're reasonably low Ks. They're the remapped version. Good chance that they should be okay. They're going to do some good highway runs on the way to that trip, so should be fine. So as far as reliability up here goes, that's the general gist of what spares I take. Not too much. I really do rely on this vehicle. Underneath, you got to just make sure anything that's ever been worked on, there you go, anything that's ever been worked on, you go over with your tools and make sure all nuts and bolts are tight. Check the specifications. If it's just suspension components, F-tight, just nice and tight. Tight as you can possibly do by hand with a reasonable tool for that size bolt, not a 3-foot long breaker bar, you know what I mean, on a M10 or something like that. So you got to have some mechanical understanding. When you're out on the trip, you got to have some mechanical sympathy is one of the biggest things. So underneath, check anything that's ever been worked on, to put it simple. We've covered the wheel bearings, bash plates being tight, all your aftermarket stuff, no wires hanging down. It's preventative maintenance, again, the right setups, keeping weight down, the way you drive the vehicle. I'll do another video. I think I waffled enough in this one. I need a drink. But what spares I take? Well, a box. a little toolbox, this little plastic toolbox, and it's got some little like spanner socket things, you know, with a flexi head on it. It's got that. It's got zip ties. It's got some epoxy glue, some tape, fuses, nuts and bolts, M6, M8, M10, maybe some washers, you know, the little thing for the alternator trick. Little bits and pieces box, right? Probably some other stuff in there I can't think of. Never really opened it up, rarely. Usually if I open it's for someone else's car. Here's a bolt for your bash plate, you know what I mean? So doesn't seem to ever be my car. Touch wood or something anyway, right? So, and also I've got this little Stanley toolkit. So it's sort of it covers your 10 mil to about 17, I think. Spanners and sockets, 3/8 drive, metric only, and it's got your Allen keys and stuff like that in it. So just a little kit like that. It's probably worth having some bigger tools. It's good if you've got a group of 6 because somebody can carry the big toolkit, someone that loves carrying the big tools. Someone else can carry the big stove, maybe 2 of those for reliability, and it's enough for a group of 6 cars, a few people, to do some communal cooking. Keeping your weight down by sharing things. How many tables do we really need? Well, you carry the table, you carry a table, there's 2 tables. You carry a gas cooker, you carry, say, 2 big double gas cookers that are reliable with the gas cans, and then a couple other people carry the tables. You know, maybe 3 fridges and 3 freezers, and, you know, work it all out together. But that's more into the food planning. This is more reliability. So what's going to stop us, really? I mean, fuel transfer in the dual tank vehicles is always a possibility. So what would be wise is if I'd already spoken to Kaon and said, hey, can we get an adapter made up that drains the fuel, that connects to the rear fuel tank that's got the drain plug in it, that we can basically siphon the fuel out of there. So it's something we might need to make up, because it'd be good to be able to get the diesel out of the rear tank, right? Which means you'd need a 10-litre jerry can or something that's low that fits down underneath the back of the vehicle, or dig a hole in the sand or something like that for the 20-litre jerry can. Siphon that fuel out without wasting any. So it needs to be like one of those Formodo valves, right? You wouldn't want to bump it though. You wouldn't want to hit a stick and open up on you. So I don't like the Formodo valves, but you'd need to be just quick getting the plug out and getting your little adapter in there with a hose on it without wasting any fuel. I'm confident that we'd be able to do that. You know, you'd have your hose on already, and although that does make it difficult, so it's probably a bad idea. So you'd pull the plug out, finger over it quickly, and then you'd put your fitting in. You'd have a plug on your fitting. That's right, screw the fitting in, and then you'd carefully hold the fitting, take the plug off, finger over it, slip the hose on, and the other end of the hose is in the jerry can. You're going to spill a little bit of diesel, but you can get it out of that tank and put it into your main tank. That's the best solution I can come up with for that fuel transfer problem. The other one is to make sure that it works. Run your tanks down directly before the trip, after you've changed your fuel filter. So don't change your fuel filter a week before the trip, because if it's got some debris in there, it could block up your Venturi, because I believe it's dirt and debris. The whole reason that filter's there, it can be the cause of the problem, okay? Because if anything gets in there, it can block it up. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but being able to get the fuel out of that rear tank and into the front tank is key if you need the fuel. Obviously, we'd have plenty of jerry cans. It's a bit easier to carry a bit of hose. We could probably jigger it out. I'm not sure. I've never really pushed a hose that far down into that tank. We could probably do that as well. Maybe it's something we need to practice doing to see if it works. A spare jigger, because, you know, sometimes, you know, have you ever had that where the end comes off and you lose it in the tank? I think it might happen to me once. Got a memory of it from many years ago. What's going to let us down? Yeah, so fuel transfer is a problem. Engines will keep going. Well, the 1KD will keep going. The automatic transmissions are bulletproof. The driveline's bulletproof, as long as there's no loose bolts from somebody working on it, putting lockers in and out, diffs in and out, any sort of work like that. Make sure all your bolts on your diff, your prop shafts, anything that's ever been worked on. Suspension, the 3 nuts up the top there, right? These ones up here, right? The one at the bottom, the big one at the bottom, your sway bar bolts, your U bracket, D bracket, what do you call it? Your link pins at the end. Just make sure everything's tight. I don't care who did your suspension. Get them to check over it. And when I say check, so I don't want you to just look at everything. I want you to put a spanner on every nut and bolt that's ever been undone on this vehicle, and anything else that you've ever heard of that might be able to come undone. On a trip like this, it's not about taking spares and preparing for disaster. It's about prevention. So this is probably the biggest detailed what spares I'm going to take video I've ever yacked about before. This is my thinking. I hope you like it. I'm going to be thinking some more, and there'll probably be some more videos. But there's your Sunday night special. On 4Before Adventures, I'm going to put out a video about once a week at the moment. If we have a big trip like the Canning Stock route, there could be a video every day. But in the meantime, whatever happens throughout the week, we'll just put it all in one video, maybe on Sunday night or something like that. I think the pattern's going to be. Let me know in the comments what you think. Is that a good? Would you rather just one long Sunday night video instead of, even if there's bits and pieces, I'll just put it all together, bits and pieces, and you can watch all the bits and pieces, and it'll just chop and change from here to there. You know, say we went to Wombat State Forest on Saturday and Cobra on Sunday. We'll just put it all together in one big long video and put it out Sunday night. How's that sound? Anyway, I've waffled enough. Bada bing, bada boomski. Catch you in the next video. Hope it helps. See ya.